9 years after Australian troops were first committed to Afghanistan following the 9/11 attacks on US targets, the National Parliament will have its first formal debate across both houses on the issue over the next 2 weeks. The Prime Minister and Opposition Leader will kick off the debate tomorrow, followed by another 2 days of discourse from any MP who wants to contribute, and a further debate in the Senate next week. 21 Australian soldiers have lost their lives in the Afghanistan conflict. Their mission is to contain Taliban activity in the province of Uruzgan while they train Afghan military and police ultimately to take over their own security in the province. Australia's military chiefs have estimated that will take another 2 to 4 years to achieve. The parliamentary debate has been forced on the government by the Greens as part of their formal deal to support a minority Labor government. And I'm joined now by Greens leader Bob Brown in Canberra. Bob Brown, given that neither the government nor the opposition is going to change their commitment of Australian troops to keeping Australian troops in Afghanistan, what's the point of this debate? What do you actually expect to achieve?
Well, hello, Kerry. It's very important that Parliament debates the commitment of any of this nation's troops to any theatre of war. That is how the British Parliament goes. The US Congress always debates the commitment of troops to a war after the President has involved them, but we've failed to do that in Australia. I think we're the only country amongst 42 countries who are or have been involved with troops in Afghanistan who's not done it. I think it's a matter of honouring the troops who are in Afghanistan. What this debate will show is that there is total solidarity in the Parliament, right across the Parliament, in support of our troops and the enormously important work they do for this nation, and as those statistics you've just given show, the extremely dangerous work they're doing.
Except you want them to come home.
Absolutely. Our position, the Greens' position for some years, has been consistent with the majority feeling amongst Australians, according to the polls, that the troops should be brought home from Afghanistan. At the moment, our troops are replacing those from the Netherlands who have been brought home after a parliamentary debate there, and we can expect that in the next 12 months we'll see the Canadians coming home. That's slated for 2012. And indeed the British contingent in Afghanistan. So we should be debating this.
But as you know, the Australian government has said, on advice from the military chiefs, that the expectation is that Australian troops will have completed their role there and be home in 2 to 4 years.
Well, it's not quite as clear-cut as that. And the question is, why not 2 years? Why 4 years? There's a great
because these things are imperfect.
Well, we have General Petraeus, the leader now from the United States of the United Nations Command in Afghanistan, indicating that this war could go on not just in our time, but in the time of our children as well. We also have a statement from the deputy of the counterintelligence office of the CIA saying that if the troops are withdrawn from Afghanistan, it will not make a significant difference to the security of the West from terrorism. That's because there are no now terrorist training bases, of course, in Afghanistan, and we aren't Kerry invading Pakistan or Yemen or Somalia where there are terrorist trading camps. That argument.
But they haven't been used as launching pads for direct attacks on Australia's main ally, the United States.
Well, the direct launching pad for those, again, as the CIA points out, were hotel rooms in Spain, apartments in Germany, and indeed pilot training centres in the United States. So we are much better placed now to deal with international criminals like Al-Qaeda, but the question as to whether the hundreds of Allied troops who have lost their lives, the thousands of Afghani civilians, and the death toll is increasing, and we've seen that with the Australian troops, 6 killed in the last 6 months, whether that commitment is effectively leading to the democracy that was touted for Afghanistan, and patently it isn't. Yep. And we have Australian experts who point out that the war cannot be successful, not on any current trajectory, in terms of a victory and the quelling, if you like, of opposition from the Taliban in Afghanistan.
But the aims aren't an all-out military victory, as you know. Major General Cantwell, the Australian commander for the Middle East, is quoted as saying just a week ago, "It's not the time to get the wobbles, it's not the time to lose faith, it's not the time to forsake the loss and the sacrifice and expense and the heartache that's gone into this." Those words don't reach you, don't create just a shred of doubt in your conviction?
Oh, of course they do. We have to take what our army commanders are saying into account here. But then I have letters from relatives of troops who are in Afghanistan or going to Afghanistan who do not want their loved ones sent to what they see as a hopeless war, as a war where there isn't an exit strategy, as a war in which the training of the Afghan contingent over there, the follow-on Afghan army, is not the only thing in which our troops are involved. They are being killed in patrolling Uruzgan province by the devices laid along the roads, and they're very
just to interrupt there, General Cantwell has reiterated that the primary role of Australian troops isn't to win a war, but to train Afghans to manage their own security in the province of Uruzgan. He says that to drop everything now is to lose the best chance of achieving that, quote, "a chance 21 Australians have died in securing."
Well, a national expert on this, Professor Hugh White, says that we are effectively unable to win this war in Afghanistan.
But General Cantwell's not saying that they're there to win a war. I just told you what they're there to do. Do you?
Well, then, no, in that case, then let that be debated in the Parliament. We get to first base then, Kerry. This is different. This is different to the perception that the Australian public has been given by the Howard government and consequent governments, that we are there indeed to win and have an exit strategy out of Afghanistan. And the very point you're making, and that General Cantwell is making, that we are not there to win the war, if that is the case, if that is now the government policy, then let that come out in the parliamentary debate, because
I thought it had already come out. But you've never taken the opportunity, we read, to go to Afghanistan to see the Australian military operation at first hand, and it's been reported that you've never even sought a briefing from the Defence Department since the first troop commitment 9 years ago. Now, if that's true, you obviously think you know enough to make an informed judgment about this issue without going to that trouble. Is that so? Is that accurate?
Well, let me say I have questioned, and my colleagues have questioned in serial Senate estimates debates, the commitment in Afghanistan, and through the Parliament. I have been taken part in parliamentary debates after ministerial statements.
But you could go to Afghanistan if you wanted, could you not?
Well, have you been there, Kerry?
I'm not making an argument for Australian troops to be brought home, Senator Brown. I mean, that's a bit disingenuous to suggest that of me, isn't it?
No, it's not, because I think we're all taking part in this debate, and there is this question about whether we should go to Afghanistan. I made moves to do just that earlier this year. The elections intervened, and I now have moves afoot to go in the near future. But
so you do now acknowledge that there is a responsibility for you to actually go there at first hand to see it?
No, I don't. Let me make this clear. I think it would be a huge mistake for 240 members of the Australian Parliament to descend upon Afghanistan.
No. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting you as the leader of a party that's arguing for the troops to come home.
Well, my understanding, my advice is that the spokesperson in defence for the coalition hasn't been there either. John Howard had our troops for 6 years in Afghanistan before he went on a very quick visit. But let me make this clear. In going to Afghanistan, you have to be very careful that you don't divert the time, the concentration, the wherewithal of our troops away from the task at hand to looking after politicians who can be briefed equally well at home. You saw Tony Abbott being having his request to be embedded with the troops, for goodness sake, being quite sensibly rejected. This isn't a matter of bravado. This is a matter of being well informed and fostering a public debate, which serial governments have been remiss in fostering here in Australia. Certainly, I would like to go to Afghanistan, but let me tell you, I am very concerned that in doing so, wherewithal is taken away from our defence forces to give us briefings back in comfortable circumstances where politicians end up in Afghanistan, briefings which could be given here in Australia. I would rather look after, make sure that the interests of our troops in Afghanistan are put before those of fly-in, fly-out politicians.
Bob Brown, we're out of time. Thanks for talking with us.
Thanks, Kerry.